there's this like relatively long blog post on soft skills. I was just arguing for in against the idea that any skill is soft. In my opinion, soft skills are skills that you acquire along the way or aren't necessarily promoted or taught in some sort of traditional business setting. Some common ones are like communication skills, being a likable person, whatever feel means. Do you have feel for your job? Feel for the people around you? These things are all soft skills. But my counterpoint to the idea of what a soft skill is it's just a flag to say, well, we don't typically train. I typically think a lot of places don't train soft skills because for whatever silly reason that they don't consider them a skill, let alone a trainable skill. I think all skills like communication, presentation of information, being able to talk to different people, being able to understand and navigate relationships within a department or cross-functionally. Soft skills are developable. They are to be developed. They also need to be identified. And your team needs to identify any skills, soft or hard. So I usually resent the idea that there is a difference in the types of skills. I think whatever the skills are required for your job, you should also be able, your company should be able to provide training on how to develop those skills too, right? And if soft skills are a part of the hiring package and there is no training for those things, whether it's like culturally, are you someone who's like adopts the core values of a company? Are you a funny person? Are you like all these fucking things? Or it's like, I didn't know I'm being fucking trained up for that. If you want someone to be that at your company, you need to train those things. If you believe those things provide value in the model that you're presenting, in the money-making model that you're presenting at your business, then you need to provide training for those things. So as I usually resent the idea of like what a soft skill is, because typically it is, in my experience, things that are just usually get swept under the rug, things that are not trained. So it feels like they only care about soft skills for management in most places, right? And that's the issue, is like soft skills of like project management, soft skills like time management, being able to get projects to the finish line, being able to talk cross-departmentally, cross-team, up and sideways, right? Vertically and horizontally across your titles. Those are all like soft skills, but those are all just communication skills. And you should be able to train communication at any level with anyone, right? So anyway, let's see what they have to say about the underestimated importance of soft skills in data science. All right, I once read that Elon Musk, who's that guy, succeeded with soft skills. At first, I thought it was hyperbole. But then I figured that you probably wouldn't want to be the first one to take humanity to Mars if you weren't resilient. You wouldn't be able to attract the best talent and partners without inspiring storytelling. But do data science really need soft skills? Turns out they do. Why are they fucking HJing Elon right now? Like, what the fuck? Like, your data science soft skill example is this fucking guy? Okay. But do data science really need soft skills? Turns out they do. Soft skills are essential, although the absolute majority, according to some studies, as much as over 90% of employers say soft skills are very important for or essential for job applicants rarely include them in their CVs. So either employees are not clearly indicating the soft skills they require, or workers are not understanding the value of them. In 1918, who was alive in anyone in chat alive back in 1918? Harvard, Carnegie Foundation, and Stanford concluded 85% of job success for engineers depend on soft skills. For some reason, chat, I feel like the engineering needs of 1918 might be different than the engineering needs of, I don't know, 2022. Just throwing that one out there. I don't know. Who's to say? Who are we to question such data? Me. I'm going to question this data, but it is not always the gold standard. What is this blog post? Who the fuck wrote this? What constitutes job success is entirely subjective and depends on which industry you're talking about. Okay? If your idea of success means to be the best Python programmer in the world, maybe a small percentage of soft skills would do the job. If you want that junior, mid, senior, lead director, VP, CEO career, 85% sounds quite realistic. I don't think that's wrong. That's what Hunter was saying. A lot of the quote-unquote soft skills are skills that are needed for management level jobs, right? Not necessarily hands-on keyboard, but in my opinion, I think communications need anywhere. And I think that's the basis of what a soft skill begins as. But it comes, what the fuck is this picture? The picture generated by DALL-E. Oh, that's data science, bro. When it comes to data scientists, in most articles on the internet, you will find the following mentioned as crucial attributes. Here are the things that are crucial. Here are the things. Excellent communication. Critical thinking. Storytelling, which is another form of communication. The ability to work in a team, which is another form of communication. Adaptability, okay. Knowledge of your brand, okay. And an enduring sense of curiosity, yes. How do we train curiosity? I always get this question in baseball. A lot of people come to me and they ask me, like, baseball is so advanced in the things that are researched, like, how are you still creative in the space of baseball when so many things have already been answered? Like, what more is there to do? And it's like, well, to train curiosity is to train, like, why things are important, right? Like, we could always ask a question of whether or not we're doing something correct, right? A validation or the quality assurance of our current processes. But if we want to develop new processes, it requires a little of this. Knowledge of your brand, or knowledge of, like, what makes, at least in baseball, players better, right? And there's so many different frontiers that we haven't even looked at that people just don't see because they literally are thinking about baseball. But what about all these extracurricular things that we just can't measure yet, right? Like, a big frontier for a lot of people is the psychology of a player, right? And the idea that the psychology of a player is an important piece of understanding what's valuable for a player, how that correlates with their on-field and off-field performances, like, that is something that is curious in our field. But, like, how would you know that psychology is an important thing to study, or an important thing to collect data on, or an important thing to run analytics on? Well, that's like the level as to which your company needs it, right? I'm sure 20 years ago, when analytics in baseball was relatively new, the last thing people were thinking about was, let's put people in fMRIs. I don't think there was a lot of people doing, like, EEG research in the batting cages, you know? But as 20 years of analytics, statistics, public work, academic work has explored the idea of what makes a good player or a good team, we're now at the precipice of expanding into new fields, new domains that are related to a player, like the psychology of a player. So sometimes it's a little about the knowledge of what's needed and exploring the things that we aren't asking questions about at the moment, right? Like, when is it when we start talking about player mentality in more than just broad terms? That's a curiosity thing, right? How do you train that? Well, you got to get people knowledgeable about your entire company and how you generate value. How do you do that? One, you have to have an interest in what generates value at your company. But two, you have to expose people and give people opportunities to see how the sausage is made. And I think that's a big issue. at a lot of big companies where they don't let a lot of people in on the decision-making process, even getting like a window in or just like standing on the fucking wall while you're making while like the people at the boardroom table are making the decision, just being a fly on the wall for when something goes from an idea to a decision, getting reps, not saying any words, but just seeing that process develop. There are so many companies that don't even do that, right? There's so many companies where the decision-making people, the director level or up people, the C-suite people, they want no one in the room unless you have the title, unless you have the privilege, right? But the importance of letting people into that conversation earlier in their career inspires this, right? And this is exactly what I was saying about what a soft skill is. If people are saying these things are important, okay, well, how do you train it? It's like, oh, well, they just have to work here long enough. Okay, and then when do they learn about it? And then when you find out, it's like, oh, when they become a fucking director and they don't have another chance to learn about it before then because it's closed door meetings all the time, well, then you just fucking goofed, bro. Like, training the soft skills is perhaps more important than identifying what they are. If you think this, and all these other fucking things that are essentially just excellent communication skills, you think all this shit is important, fucking train for them. And it's not difficult to do that. Just give people opportunities to understand where this comes into play. And then see what happens. Slight transparency for a gigantic gain in education of your company equals retention of highly important, highly valuable employees. That's some shit that you could read about in studies that are more recent than 1918. That's for fucking sure. When you think of it, these qualities apply to almost any professional. Who among us has a problem with critical thinking these days? Me. I have a problem. Fuck critical thinking. Tarot cards only. Or storytelling in the era of storytelling. Dude, what is this fucking writing, bro? Or the ability to work in a team assuming you have not yet gone full Henry David Thoreau and live alone in the woods. Bro. The soft skills needed for data scientists are almost the same as many other specialties. Why? As Davidus Skiparis, Turing College instructor and data scientist at Vinted, he says, just look at what a typical day for a data scientist entails. Breakfast, stand-up, A/B test analysis and presentation to the team, new feature analysis / research and discussions, table football match. So, that's the cultural side of the company, guys. Data requests from other teams. Work prioritization because everyone needs your help. Eat, sleep, repeat. Almost all the steps require those soft skills, and technical / analytical work probably takes less than half of the working time. Soft skills are no less necessary for data people than the ability to analyze data. I mean, he's not wrong. I would say that this is sort of like a contrite version of what the fuck happens. This also leans a little towards that idea that this person abides by the laws of hustle culture. I would say that, yeah, throughout your day, listen to the parts where communication is like an important piece of it. Stand up, where you're communicating what's happening through your day. Presentation to a team, where you're literally presenting, communicating stuff. Having discussions about new research. I wonder where that has to do with communication. Requests from other teams that you have to talk to. Work prioritization because everyone else needs your help. You might be able to do this independently. Eat, sleep, repeat. Yeah, I mean, like, the whole breakfast / eat, sleep, repeat stuff is like, yeah, we get it. You're a human who lives for your work. Way to go. Davidus Skiparis. Way to go, bro. However, as Skipar says, one of the soft skills that is rarely pointed out is listening. Oh, this is good. This is a good hot take. This is a good hot take. How often do data scientists start thinking about a solution after hearing the first few sentences about a problem? I do that, and then I punish myself for not fully listening, for not understanding the details, for having to go back and ask what was discussed while I was constructing my SQL query in my head. Consultants are not taught to jump too fast into solutions. First, clarify the problem, and only then look for solutions. In other words, to be able to listen. This should be learned by every data person. I will say, listening is a skill that you can also teach, and is typically learned firsthand why it's important. And I'm not saying this to be like condescending or facetious or tongue-in-cheek or anything, but truly, listening is really important. And then the meta level of listening, like if you are listening to someone and you find how they're presenting information or how they're communicating to you is inefficient, or like maybe they go on long-winded rants, maybe they say things in long-winded ways, maybe they set up problems or go through logical jumps in ways that are skipping details that are important to someone who doesn't understand the problem. Like if you identify those things, it's important to give that feedback. But then you also want to commit to yourself that, like, as I was listening, these are the things that I didn't appreciate or were ineffective communicating to myself. How do I become aware of when those things are happening when I speak? Like if you find yourself going into long-winded descriptions of things, or if you find yourself not being able to connect one piece of the puzzle to the other in a way that isn't full of technical jargon, or if you find yourself discussing things and taking tangents and not being able to come back to the original point, right? If you find these things distracting as forms of communication to yourself, the reflection of, am I communicating in effective ways, is really important. Meta listening, meta communication. Self-reflection is also a quote-unquote skill, a soft one that is important. And I think it is important to understand where that awareness begins. And it isn't like you identifying things that are like soft, things like, oh, we should listen more, or we should communicate in certain ways. Why? And having someone who's honest and transparent with you as to how you're doing it, these are things that hopefully will help build you as a better communicator and put you in good situations where your communication skills can be appreciated and also identified, and like, oh, this person's trying, this person's developing their communication with me or with my team or in this particular project or with whomever, right? Like being able to also measure that communication skill. And it's fine if it's a subjective measure. If you're talking to a manager and that manager who's a stakeholder for a project is like someone who maybe came from your department, or maybe someone who was a data scientist before and now manages a different department, that person is, a bastion of data science communication because they worked in the department. They understand the types of people who get hired in and their communication levels. They understand the culture that is developed through the hiring process in that department. They understand that, like, maybe this place doesn't necessarily hire communication skills as a requirement, but over time they need to develop it if they want to grow. That's a person you can tee up. That's a person who can tee up people on your team when you're learning about communication. And if you're trying to set someone up for success in soft areas and soft skills, right? So if this isn't sounding familiar to you, if this is like, I never thought about being able to train or learn or being able to like level up my abilities in soft areas like listening or talking or whatever the fuck. If this is literally novel or new, I strongly recommend you talk to your direct manager soon about how you can get feedback and also be put in situations where you can not just develop and improve, but also be an impact communicator, an impact soft skiller, you know? Because like the beginning of this very strange article says, people who are using these skills the most tend to be people who need to communicate the most, and those tend to be managers, directors, leadership people. This is personal development skill, and that will help you in other aspects of life. Exactly. Like learning how to communicate effectively at your work and having someone at your work say, like, this is why it's valuable to do it in these ways. You can take that with you literally anywhere. You know? How you talk to your friends. I mean, it sounds really fucking weird and shitty in a, like, slightly, like, dehumanized way if you're learning how to talk at work and you're talking to your friends as if you talk to them at work. If you're in a good situation at work where they're trying to just teach you how to be a better listener, a better communicator, why not apply that in your real life, right? Do you think I am any different at work than how I am on stream in terms of how I talk? You know? Like, the only difference is that I'm not reading people's communications back to me. The only difference is people talk to me with their fucking voice, you know? Like, they're saying words to me back. And I'm waiting on receptive. I spend time saying what I want to say. I make sure I make time for chat. For them to say what they want to say. Because that's important too. That's the nice thing about this soft area of Twitch. Engagement. Live engagement. And live engagement is what I do for a living, right? Superposito's also distinguishes attention to detail as a key skill. According to him, this also applies to any other specialty, is particularly necessary for data scientists. Attention to detail. I feel like this is... I wonder how he distinguishes this from like any other point of attention to detail, because data science is an extremely attention to detail driven area. There's a literal thing called hyperparameter tuning, which is literally detail. It is literally modeling detail that you need to pay particular attention to. Like, what is this job other than attention to detail? In my opinion, it is the small things that matter. Can you notice any anomalies in the data? Are there any gaps in the storytelling? Are the color palettes consistent? Are the visuals neat? Is the code easy to read? This can greatly affect the quality of work and influence for this. Okay, so this is a little of a tell here, because all the things that he mentioned, neat. Gee golly. This is a little of a tell, because in my opinion, if this is a soft skill and like you need to learn the small things along the way, no one's telling you that these are things you should be doing, that you're just draconianly graded on whether or not you can do these things. In particular, this shouldn't be a soft area. You should be required to understand the fucking nature of your data. Are there any anomalies in the data? Bro, data QA is an important piece of the data science development process. Like, if this is like a attention to detail stuff that you're not educating on, that's kind of fucking weird, champ, bro. Are there any gaps in the storytelling? Okay, so this is something that I do think you should be being trained on. You should be trained on how to tie up the storytelling of a project, right? Like when we read through a notebook, or when we read through a project outline, or a one-pager of results or something, like all of those executive summaries that you get out of a data science department, that is a lot about how effective can you communicate data science without showing any of the modeling of it, using any technical jargon, but to communicate effectively what the result was and what the action step should be, right? Gaps in the storytelling are things like logical conclusions without allusion or implicit mention of the technical detail, right? being able to sell the idea is like something that a lot of people say in many different companies. Like this is good work. It's objectively important. It's doing something that we're going to use regardless of like anything that happens on the at the decision making end. This is going to replace something on the back end. To sell it and to sell you as the person who did it, we need a good story, right? What problem did we fix? How did you find a solution to the problem? What does it look like now? What does the story say? Well, what are we doing at the end of this story? Do we walk away saying like we're better because we gained, or we minimize loss? As in like company minimizes the amount of error in terms of a prediction or something? What's happening, right? If this isn't something that's being trained, if you're just expected to learn how to do this on your own, that's fucking weird. Are the color palettes consistent? If you're not being told by your project manager or by your project lead that you're using like default palettes in one place and like the company palettes in another, that's fucking weird. Are the visuals neat? I'm guessing this is just like your classic, Tuftian visualization practices for business data viz, right? Like ink to white space ratio, clearly labeled axes, clearly labeled information, presenting only the most impactful information before presenting like all your interactions and everything, like are your visuals like business grade, right? High level grade. Again, you should be fucking taught how to do that. Is the code easy to read? You should be taught how to do that in code review. In code review, if you don't have a code review person who's out there saying you're not following whatever your your coding guidelines are, you need to train better at code review. We need to adopt better code review practices, which includes code formatting. This can greatly affect the quality of work and influence other steps. Again, I'm under the impression that soft skills also means skills that are not being trained directly by the company. And I'm usually not wrong about this, but I do think like if these are a bunch of things where like that's not happening, then this is like kind of fucked. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope at Skiparis's company, all of these things are stuff that they're identifying as training grounds, but if they aren't, then this is just a big old red flag of things we don't train. Since data scientists are constantly faced in situations where it is necessary to make a decision that will determine the trajectory of a project, decision-making is another extremely fundamental skill. And we talked about this before, like being able to see the decision-making process is as important as having people making it, because you need to train the next generation of decision makers. And in order to do that, they need to get the visual reps. They need to be in a room where people are making decisions. And if they don't have that, if they don't have just a mental model of what that looked like at least one time, how do you expect them to succeed at any time? It's very rare that someone's just good at it, right? It's very easy to find yourself in situations where to make a trivial decision, you could spend another 2 weeks analyzing and thinking. But you only have 2 hours. For example, in data modeling, you need to choose the best features for your model. It seems trivial enough. We all know how to create a model and look at feature importance with n different tools. But when it comes time to clearly communicate to the developers, I often start asking myself if I really did anything to find the most optimal solution. Will it really be good? And if not, according to Scott Paris, when headhunting prospective employees, he takes into account general soft skills, which are necessary for most specialists. During a job interview, it's difficult to assess an individual's ability to work in a team, their adaptability, or their brand knowledge, but it is easy to notice that some skills are clearly absent, which already is a major red flag. But this, in my experience, happens quite rarely. Okay, we're gonna get here. We're gonna get here soon. Okay. The term soft skills is dynamic, meaning that it evolves and is reappraised quite often, a different skill set is needed now. For example, to that of 20 years ago. According to Scaparis, the art of negotiation will be increasingly appreciated in the future. I think that it is time for people to learn how to negotiate, from getting the conditions from your job offer to working with competing demands to compromising for the simplest solutions and the best solutions on a project. It's one of the most important skills. You're not wrong. I think all of this right here is pretty important. I think, yeah, soft skills do get reappraised fairly frequently, much more frequently than hard skills, right? But I think the most important part here is when they are being reappraised and when you are apparently evaluating people on them having these things or not, and apparently, at least in this person's experience, the bar is relatively low of having of what these skills are supposed to look like. My opinion is that if you, here's the ideal pipeline in some ways, right? You get a person who is some sort of entry level or intern, and you want to turn them into the lead of the fucking department, right? Like, let's say that's the pipeline, right? What skills does the lead have, and what skills does the current entry level person have? How many skills do they need to develop? Plan for each of those skills, and that's the roadmap for that person, right? I don't think it's actually that difficult to understand what skills are needed to be the next lead. I think the most difficult part is actually having leadership or management invest time into figuring out actual skill development situations, especially when it comes to communication related things, especially when it comes to soft skills, right? At the end of the day, they're all skills. They all require development. And if you're a good company or you have a good team, you should have good ways to train these things. All skills. All skills. Can you learn soft skills? This is make or break. Let's make or break. It's true that soft skills can certainly be harder to learn, but our brains are capable of acquiring cognitive, emotional, and social intelligence. Oh, I cannot wait for this blog person to tell me about what our brains can do. And we have a lot of potential. Oh, neuroplasticity. Oh, what's the paper we link for neuroplasticity? All right, this is a good paper. This is a good paper for it. Not the paper I would cite, but sure. Way to go. You literally Googled the term brain plasticity in Scholar. Okay. Neuroplasticity suggests that we can learn even the most complex things. But there are no shortcuts for that. It simply takes a lot of time and work. Malcolm Gladwell had a great point suggesting his 10,000 hour rule, which is completely debunked by the fucking neuroscience and cognitive science community. I knew we were on the wrong fucking path when it began with Elon Musk as the top example on this fucking post, bro. I fucking knew we were on the wrong path. I fucking knew it. There's growing science. I knew that was gonna come up. See, dude, 10,000 hour rule doesn't actually fucking do anything. This is disproven. This has nothing to do with becoming an expert in any fucking field. The thing that makes you an expert in any fucking field is gaining expertise through experiences that promote your skill development. It could take 10,000 hours. It could take less. It could take significantly more. But it has nothing to do with doing any one thing for 10,000 hours and you becoming the fucking best at whatever the fuck you do if you dedicate 10,000 hours to it. It's just a stupid fucking pop science, bro science, pseudoscience claim by Malcolm Gladwell, who he himself has kind of gone off the fucking pseudoscience deep end at times, alright? I understand his pop science and his contributions in the modern cognitive and psychological world, but we cannot deny his literal academic science controversies and kind of how he likes fucking running his mouth sideways, gets disproven all the fucking time, tries to double down, gets disproven more, and then fucking goes and writes a book.
Data science is kind of a fake pseudoscience, in my opinion.
True.
We should have leaders making the decisions, not some random model that accounts for super small things that don't really have a real impact.
That is my opinion too. The idea that someone like Malcolm Gladwell can just write a book and everyone thinks that it's truth is because of the platform this man has built. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people with platforms who disseminate not good or not reasonable or not scientific information these days. 10,000 hour rule is probably definitely a top 3 neuroscience, pseudoscience things. Number 1 has to be like 10% of the brain, 90% of the brain thing. We only use 10% of our brain at any time. There's a growing scientific evidence that you can learn all kinds of soft skills. Oh, let's see. Let's take communication. Oh, we can learn about communication. Wow. Our brains are wired to hear what we expect to hear. However, there is already data that suggests we can train our listening by paying close attention and actively listening. Okay, that is actually that is the psychological way. Programs designed to improve teamwork and collaboration show positive outcomes, at least in the short term. What's this paper? A systematic review in teamwork training interventions in medical students. Improve teamwork and collaboration show, at least in the short term. Okay, even empathy, which would seem to be a really intangible quality that everyone has a different understanding of, can be improved. Just because you have a different understanding of what something is doesn't mean that there's an actual underlying objective scientific definition for what it is. This is literally the reason why soft skills is a stupid fucking term. It's because there's people out there who think, oh, it's hard to teach empathy because people have different definitions. No, people have different definitions about empathy because they were never educated on what the fuck empathy was. Okay? If that's important to you at your business, take a fucking class in psychology and learn about emotional processes. Learn about mirror neurons. Learn about theory of mind. Learn about empathy. It's not fucking hard, bro. If you want someone to learn these fucking things, you need to learn it for yourself and then train how you fucking learned why these things are important in your goddamn business. Oh my god. It's so fucking crazy to think that, like, these things are just hard to teach. They're not fucking hard to teach. You're making it harder to teach because you think it's hard to teach. It's not fucking hard to teach. The premise of this article is good. The writing and the fucking romanticism about what soft skills are is fucking stupid. There's growing evidence that you can learn all, like, communication. Okay, all this shit. Yes, even empathy, y'all. Attention to detail can also be learned. It's the prize. Although the internet is full of advice that is not backed up by evidence, even a simple habit such as multitasking can improve our attention. Bro, attention to detail and attention are two completely fucking different things. There's literal research out there on attention to detail. This is a literal field of science. Attention to detail can be learned. Although the internet is full of, and then like they point to something just because this person is trying to like Google some research papers based off some like weird things here, and then randomly throws in Malcolm Gladwell and Elon Musk in there to get some like, you know, respective authority logical fallacies, doesn't mean there's not research and shit. Like, literally, attention to detail. You want to be fucking more detailed, dude? Surprise. The way to be more detailed is to have more exposure and experience to things that seemingly are have repetition to them. Like code review. Code review is a great example of attention to detail. Attention to detail process, an attention to detail engine is code review. Because the more good code you look at, and the more times you get reviewed as to how to write good code, the more attention to detail you have, and then the more you can give advice when you're code reviewing someone else. That is attention to detail. It's the amount of reps you get in situations where small differences mean a lot. when it comes to the quality of your code. That's attention to detail. Of course you can learn attention to detail. It's literally called training. Just train the person on how to code review well. Just train a person on all of these fucking things. Jesus. Am I the only fucking crazy person who thinks this is all coming to a point of like, we're entering the land of bullshit? Like, what the fuck? According to Scaparis, we learn certain soft skills at work and others by communicating with our significant other, friends, parents, and children. However, unlike tech skills, soft skills do not have a standard. Every manager is different. Every storyteller tells differently. Everyone's communication is different. I think starting to learn something so abstract, it's important. It's much more important to learn how not to begin. So first, learn what kind of leader, employee, parent, spouse you don't want to be, and over time, supplement the skill with life experiences and personality traits. Learning doesn't take a year or two, but a lifetime. So 10-hour Coursera course will definitely not be enough, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't sign up for some other bullshit. Okay, I don't want to promote that. If this is how you're saying it, and it's coming from the point of view of like, well, it's hard to teach all these things, and that's why people are different, that would be a lot different than saying, we do teach people all these things, and they still communicate differently. I think that would be a completely reasonable and fine point of view. But something that is not reasonable is, well, everyone's different, therefore we're not going to try very hard in training people, because they're going to be different anyways. That's like, 1, defeatist. 2, completely illogical. If these are important skills, you need to develop them. If you think they are valuable and add value to your company, then you need to invest time in order to make them valuable more consistently, employee to employee. Just like code review makes code consistent from employee to employee, just like how research methods and training research methods internally is important to the quality of your research and development department. Just like how putting people in situations where they can learn how to communicate in meetings, or learn how to understand what the decision-making process is like, or learn why we made certain decisions at a decision-making level. All of these things are things you can train. It involves someone to invest the time to develop the pipelines to train these things.
Because.
Going back, John. And if you don't have a manager, if you don't have a leader at your company that is trying to invest time in how to develop literally these things, then you need to encourage leadership to start investing time to develop these so-called soft skills. Because again, when we talk about the stupidity of the term soft, these are typically the reason we call these soft skills is because either we aren't trying to identify them early enough, or because we don't think we actually need to develop them, and people will learn how to do these things along the way. And that's just not true. Just like how you don't just along the way learn how to code better. You need people to help you to code better. You need people to teach you what good coding practices are. No one wakes up and knows how to quit Vim. Okay? You needed someone to help you. All right? You needed someone to fucking help you. It's just like soft skills. You need someone to help you learn these skills. You need someone to help you how to communicate with your voice, through written word, through visualization. You need someone to tell you when you're talking more than you're listening. You need to tell someone, and this is important right here, learn what kind of person you don't want to be, and then maximize on all the things that aren't that. This is something we talked about before. If you find yourself listening to a person who has long-winded descriptions, long-winded communication, 1, it's important to tell someone, and particularly them directly, it's important to tell someone that that's happening. 2, ask yourself, are you doing that? And 3, if you are, ask your boss or ask a peer, truthfully, do I do that? Is my communication style long-winded? This is an easy one that anyone can do in this chat. In this chat, literally anyone here, you should be able to ask a coworker, a friend at your work, ask your boss, ask whomever. You're someone who you trust with career advice. Ask them. When I communicate, am I long-winded? I dare every single person in this chat right now who can hear me. I dare you to ask. By the end of this week, ask one of your coworkers, hey, just brutally honest question. I dare you ask. I dare you ask. I dare you. Ask someone at your work, a peer at the same level, an intern that you like, a boss that you feel confident talking to, someone cross-departmentally. I dare you to ask. Someone for career advice, someone you work with. Am I long-winded when I communicate?
Ask not what your coworker can do for you, but what you can do for your coworker, especially if that coworker is me.
Thank you, John. Hello. Hello. I'm definitely long-winded. I've already had this conversation with my boss. But do you have to do anything to be less long-winded, right? The idea that communication is linked to value means communication, effective communication, is linked to your development, right? And so if your boss doesn't have pathways for you to become a better, more effective communicator, given your long-winded nature, your boss should. Your boss should try to develop that within you, right? He's really helpful about providing good constructive feedback. Like, I have a tendency to ramble rather than get to the point, especially when communicating to technical details to non-technical workers. But is he putting you in situations where you can communicate openly with the intent that at the end, whatever you communicate is second, and the primary thing is the person you're communicating with, they're going to give you feedback on what would have been better? Because that would be a very active way to train communication. Surprise, right? We said this already, and I just want to reiterate it because I think it is a really important part, right? If there was someone in your department who left the department to another department or left the team for another team, and there is a relationship between those teams or relationship between those departments, that's a great person, an advocate for data science, where say you've delivered a product or say you're delivering a product to put you in a good situation, and we know this person's a trusted agent of data science, they're not going to be afraid that Radar Live is a long-winded person because they might know Radar Live already, or they might know of people like Radar Live and how a lot of people might get lost in the technical jargon sauce. And they're going to let you do it because that's just how you roll. And it's not going to be scary because they came from your department. It's not going to be scary because they understand what you're saying ultimately. So communicating on a technical level is going to be easy. But the purpose of this exercise isn't to hear exactly what you're trying to communicate. It's the way you do it, right? Do you have trusted agents outside of your team or department that would allow you to train becoming a better communicator? Like, I can identify many people at my organization where I can say, hey, I'm trying to help this person on my team in analytics to be a better analytics communicator. Is it okay if we take a 30-minute meeting, all three of us, and he's just going to walk you through something you already know, but he wants to go through the exercise of, like, he's going to describe it to you and, like, try to educate you. And he's under the impression that you know a little about it. Maybe, like, a little white lie, you knew all about it all along, but maybe he walks you through a model or walks you through a new update to something that you already knew about. You being a person who is outside of the department, and also someone who is technically savvy, technically important, right, in terms of the pipeline. When you're communicating and you're wondering about, like, oh, can you provide me feedback? And your boss says, hey, yeah, you're a little long-winded, okay? That's a good step of like, all right, I'm glad that I got feedback. I'm glad that I'm more aware. You need to actively train this thing because, again, if we are saying that communication is apparently an important step, if communication is something that's a soft skill that is valuable and valued at your company, then you need training pipelines to learn how to become a better, more effective communicator. All right? You need that. You absolutely fucking need that. Because if you don't have a way to get better, not just understanding that you're bad at it and that you're going to get better over time. That's what makes this stupid idea of soft skills stupid, is because they expect you to just get better or improve because they don't have ways to teach you. They're all skills. Therefore, they should all have training. Therefore, if you don't have active training in how to be a better communicator, you need to ask leadership or ask your boss, how can you put me in situations that would improve my communication, and give them that idea. Say, hey, what's his name? Hey, Nick Wan left this department and is now in this other department. He used to be in this part. Is it okay if we set up a meeting, a 30-minute meeting of me describing to Nick a model update, and then rather than him gaining information about this new model update, the primary purpose of the meeting is for Nick to provide feedback on how I communicated this model update. Right? That's where it's important. That's where it's okay, we've identified in an area of opportunity. We're now going from just identifying and being aware of it to actively training you to get better in this opportunity, right? And it is a soft skill. But the reason it's called soft is because of the fucking traditional people out there who think these things are hard to teach. They're not hard to teach. They're only hard to teach if people think they're hard to, if your leadership doesn't want to put time and effort into teaching these things that are valuable skills. If you are on a technical team and you are worried or you are interested in the idea of quote unquote soft skills and you're interested in how you develop, say, communication, I dare you to begin the process this week. Ask someone at work, ask someone you trust who's a coworker in terms of career advice. Ask your boss if you feel like your boss will give you honest, good, critical advice. Ask an intern who, you might be able to trust someone where, you're above them. They're going to give you good advice. So, trust whoever at your fucking company. I dare you to ask them, hey, am I long-winded? When I communicate things, am I long-winded? And get that honest feedback.
No one.
Get the honest feedback of whether or not you're a long-winded person. And if the answer is yes, if the answer is there's ways to improve, there's ways to be aware of being a long-winded communicator, then the next question is there a way for me to work on this? Is there a way for me to be trained to be better at communicating? And if there isn't, then that's the reason they fucking call it soft skills at your department or in your job or at your company. They just expect you to be good at it. No, fuck that.